question, Ms Edge.
Mr Speaker, I'm just wondering how many candidates have actually sat in on a sitting, and is there anything in particular that you felt was different to being in sittings?
And anything you thought differently about not having sat in?
Haven't sat in.
Okay. Well, we'll start this one with Ms Joughin.
Yes, I've sat in a number of times. It seemed a pretty well-oiled machine to me. I had the impression, certainly the feeling, that everybody was working very well together. They were very supportive of each other. They were undertaking the role that they're meant to be undertaking, which is scrutiny and revising the legislation when I've sat in. I've spoken to a couple of MLCs to get their feedback and understanding of the role and how they see it. And they're certainly very involved with MHKs, with departments. They've got a very good grasp overall of government and the way that the island is run. I think I'd probably have to actually be in it to understand how it could be improved. I don't think I can say from the outside that I understand exactly enough about the workings of it to render an opinion on any immediate improvements.
Thank you. Mr Furner?
I confess I've been to Tynwald only once, and that was recently at the budget speech. I was there in the morning, so that's an unusual Tynwald. And I've been to Legislative Council just once. My experience of the Legislative Council was I was very favourably impressed with the diligence with which the members went through clause by clause, every single word, and the quality of the explanation of the legislation as well. This was to do with the credit union bill and safeguarding children and vulnerable adults. As I say, I was very impressed, and I wouldn't want to change that. I noted that the style was very formal, but I imagine it has to be in order for business to be conducted properly. After all, we are affecting the lives of an entire nation, and so that formality, I imagine, is justified. But that formality was somewhat strange to me, coming from the business world into political life.
Mrs Lord-Brennan.
I've been to quite a few Tynwald sittings over the years, so I can't remember the first time was when I went to one, but it was certainly a few years ago, and I've been to a few more recently. I will say that since the last general election, and you kind of look down, or maybe if you find yourself in a situation where there's a talk on or something, there's definitely a different feeling, I think, now than there was. Things seem to be a little bit more, I don't know, just a little bit more of a dynamic feeling. I just think that there's obviously been such a shake-up in the Keys membership that, to me, from somebody looking at things of how things might have been maybe 5 years ago, looking at them now, it feels different. It feels a bit of an easier place to be in. Perhaps I am speaking there as a young woman. I have been to one sitting of the Legislative Council, and obviously, actually, it's a very solemn affair, and the seriousness of it made me think, gosh, am I doing the right thing here? But it made me think about the long history of LegCo and the seriousness of what it is we're doing. So, although slightly intimidated at first, it did cause me to think, right, are you doing the right thing? Yes, I am. And I just think it's brilliant that you can go to these things. And also, I do listen quite a lot on the radio as well. So I enjoy that too.
Thank you. Mr Kelly.
No, I haven't actually been to LegCo, but I spent a lot of time looking at the Hansard transcripts. And I look at the comments. I mean, I was really impressed also with the kind of level of critical thinking that's applied to a lot of the bills. And different views that are put forward. And I think it's a shame, really, that doesn't come across to the general public. The general public, I think, a very different view. But I think we look at the transcripts and the detail, and some of it, is really heavy going. It lasts quite a long time. So I was really impressed. I noticed also that was the general view in the kind of Lisbane report about the functioning of LegCo from that perspective.
Thank you. Mrs Humbles.
Well, I've spent obviously an awful lot of time while I've been at 3FM in Energy, and then moving on to Manx Radio, listening to it on the radio and frantically trying to pull together stories and sound bites from all of you, which is quite different from what I've been able to experience in watching it live, which I've not had the opportunity to do quite as much as I've wanted to before, because I've always been working on the day. Facial expressions, it's interesting to see how people are communicating via facial expressions and also with the messages that are passed as well. It definitely it brings a new dimension to it, and yeah, I've seen I was quite impressed by it, and certainly by the formality and the tradition as well that's involved and is observed by all of the members as well. Sometimes debating issues, just as a point, I suppose, is, you know, you go from one person to the next, to the next, like with the what was being discussed in relation to the bishop's vote. There could potentially be some room for more debate, and also not manoeuvring onto a different subject matter and sticking with the subject matter at hand before moving forward and debating something that's further down the order paper. But I was really impressed by it, and I was really excited by it, and that's why I stuck around, I suppose. but yeah, it was a wonderful experience to see it in front of my face, as opposed to through headphones in a newsroom.
Thank you, Mrs. Corlett.
Thank you. Yes, I have attended. I've actually found it very useful and helpful to go along. I was impressed by the thoroughness of LegCo and the way in which they looked at the legislation, and the fact that they had very good understanding of what they were looking at. This, even though some of it's quite technical, certainly from the financial services perspective when we were taking things from the authority. And I found it was amazingly helpful to be able to engage in conversation with them to explain some of the more technical aspects, rather than having to write notes or type desperately on an iPad to get the message across to answer questions. So I found that really, really useful, and on the basis of that, I have no suggestions for improvement in that area.